Most people think they know what the best longevity diet is. Eat more plants, eat less fat, lower cholesterol, eat more frequently. But what if I told you that everything you knew about longevity diet is wrong? Because the real driver of aging is not protein, is not fat, is not calories, it's insulin. And if you don't control it, your body ages faster, stores more fat, damages your blood vessels, and blocks the real metabolic health. Now, some people would say, but what about Japan? What about these islands where people live long and their diet is predominantly based on carbohydrates? Well, that's true. But there is the key difference. They are not living like you. They typically have lower calorie intake, higher daily activities, far less processed foods, and also fewer constant insulin spikes. And most importantly, they don't eat kind of refined, frequent, high-load carbohydrates that dominate Western diets. So their diets may include carbs, but their metabolic environment is completely different. And this is why applying these examples to today's Western lifestyle leads to wrong conclusions. In this video, I will show you why low insulin is the foundation of longevity, why low-carb diets outperform high-carb diets long-term, why foods like meat, eggs, and oily fish are critical for survival, and why high cholesterol may actually be protective, not dangerous. Now, most people think that aging is just about getting older, but biologically, aging is damage accumulation. And one of the biggest drivers of that damage is chronically elevated insulin. And when insulin is high, fat burning shuts down, inflammation increases, your arteries stiffen, and oxidative stress rises. And over time, that leads to cardiovascular disease, metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, and accelerated aging. And this is not just a theory, this is strongly supported by research in metabolic science and aging. Studies on hyperinsulinemia show direct link between chronically elevated insulin and accelerated aging. Large-scale studies have shown that elevated insulin, even before diabetes develops, is associated with increased cardiovascular risk, higher all-cause mortalities, and accelerated metabolic dysfunction. I have often said that one of the most important markers of your blood test should be fasting insulin, because fasting insulin is not only saying about your insulin levels, but also pinpoints at your metabolic health. For example, research from the Paris prospective studies have shown that higher fasting insulin levels were strong predictor of coronary heart disease and mortality, independent of other risks. So you see how important this fasting insulin level is. So lower that level, better for you. Another major studies published in Diabetes Care have shown that individuals with higher insulin levels have significantly increased risk of cardiovascular diseases, even when the blood glucose was normal. So what this means physiologically, when insulin stays elevated, fat burning is suppressed. When your insulin is high, you can't burn body fat. Also, high insulin level cause inflammation. Oxidative stress rises, and also blood vessels become damaged. Over time, this leads to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. And these exact conditions are strongly associated with early death. And this is why insulin is not only fat loss hormone, as most people believe. It is the key regulator of long-term health and survival. In many of my videos, I have emphasized the importance of low carbohydrate diets for fat loss and also muscle growth. But this time, I want to tell you something even more important. These low-carb diets are very powerful because they lower insulin naturally. And when carbs are reduced, your insulin drops, fat burning increases, and metabolic flexibility improves. And this is why low-carb diets consistently show improvement in blood sugar control, triglycerides, HDL cholesterol, and body composition. One major study published in New England Journal of Medicine in 2003 compared low-carb versus low-fat diets. This was done in the paper A Low Carbohydrate as Compared with Low-Fat Diet. And this research has shown that low-carb group lost much more weight, improved key metabolic markers in short term. In my video on cholesterol, I have suggested that people on low-carb, high-protein, medium-fat diet may have higher cholesterol in overall due to increased level of LDL, low-density lipoprotein. But this doesn't mean that something is wrong. Most importantly is the ratio between your triglycerides and HDL. Now, low group showed drop in the triglycerides level and increase in HDL, high-density lipoprotein or good cholesterol. So this is the key for longevity. You want to have your triglycerides low and your HDL high. Another benefit of low carbohydrate diets is that they reduce glycation. So glycation is when sugar damages proteins in your body. This leads, for example, to wrinkles, organ damage, and faster aging. So lower carbohydrates means less glycation and slower aging. Again, you see enormous benefits of low-carb diets when it comes to longevity. Now, let us debunk the biggest myth, and this is that animal foods are harmful for you, because in reality, animal foods provide the most critical nutrients for survival. For example, in red meat, you have complete protein, which is made of essential amino acids, which are absolutely necessary for survival. You have iron, highly available iron, compared to iron in plants. Then you have zinc, and you also have B vitamins. In eggs, you have cholesterol, which is essential for hormones, especially testosterone, estrogen, for example. Then you have choline, which is very important for brain health, and also you have all these fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E. So you see that in meat and eggs, you have extremely important ingredients, components, which are not only important for your health, but also directly related to longevity. Now, when it comes to oily fish, you have omega-3 fatty acids, which are obviously very anti-inflammatory compounds, and they protect your cardiovascular system. So research has constantly shown that omega-3 is directly linked to reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and lower mortality risk. For example, studies published in Journal of American Medical Association have linked higher omega-3 levels with lower risk death from cardiovascular diseases. And you can read it yourself. One of the strongest papers on this subject is Association of Plasma Phospholipid Long-Chain Omega-3 Fatty Acids with the total and cause-specific mortality, published in Journal of American Medical Association in 2013. So you see, these things have been known for a long time, but obviously for whatever reasons, people are still clinging to high carbohydrate, medium protein, low fat diets, which are actually causing all these opposite effects when it comes to metabolic health and longevity. Now, what they did in this study on omega-3, they have followed 2,600 adults. They measured their blood levels of omega-3 fatty acids, and they followed participants for 16 years. So what did they find is actually that higher omega-3 levels were associated with lower total mortality. So around 27% lower risk of death overall. Also lower cardiovascular mortality. Around 35% lower risk of death from heart disease. And also lower arrhythmic death, significant reduction in sudden cardiac death. So these are not just optional nutrients, They are fundamental for human physiology. So when you have all these essential nutrients from meat, from eggs and oily fish, you are basically protecting your metabolic health and giving your body everything that the body needs to function perfectly and last longer. So these essential nutrients, again found in meat, eggs and oily fish, are your best ticket for longevity. So let me tell you a few words about cholesterol and longevity. This topic has been controversial because for decades you have been told that cholesterol is dangerous. So if your cholesterol is higher, this is very bad for you. But you were never explained actually why is that? Is it really true? Now the newer research tells a very different story. Several large observational studies have found that older individuals with higher cholesterol live longer. For example, research published in BMJ found that in many cases, higher LDL cholesterol was associated with lower mortality in elderly population. Now, when it comes to LDL, low-density lipoprotein, it's not true that it's bad, because there are two different types. There is a buoyant, fluffy LDL, which is harmless, and that LDL will go higher if you follow high protein, high or moderate fat diet with low carbohydrates, simply because that buoyant, fluffy LDL will have to transport fat and cholesterol through your blood, because you're going to be eating more fat and you will be depending on fat as energy, not carbohydrates. So there's nothing wrong with that. Now there is another LDL, and this is small, dense LDL. This one is more dangerous. Now this small, dense LDL is directly related to insulin resistance. Obviously, that comes out of high carbohydrate diet. And this small, dense LDL can easily penetrate the artery walls, is linked to higher oxidation, and also stay longer in circulation. But one should not misinterpret LDL as bad, because as I just explained, there are two different types. There's this fluffy, buoyant LDL, which is completely neutral, is not dangerous, and the other one, which is small, dense LDL, which is directly related to insulin resistance, obviously linked with high carbohydrate diets. As research has shown, elderly people who were analyzed and researched and who live long had higher cholesterol levels due to that higher LDL, in particular fluffy buoyant LDL. And these findings were explained in the paper Lack of an Association or an Inverse Association between Low-Density Lipoprotein Cholesterol and Mortality in Elderly, a Systematic Review, published in BMJ 2016. And this research was also conducted in 19 different studies, included 68,000 adults over 60, and they looked at LDL cholesterol levels versus mortality. So the key findings were that higher LDL was not associated with higher mortality. In many cases, higher LDL was associated with lower all-cause mortality. And why? Because cholesterol is simply essential for cell membrane integrity. So cell membrane is the most important part of the cell. So when the cell membrane is permeable, it allows nutrients to go in and byproducts to go out easily. We are talking about very good metabolic health. And this is directly related to cholesterol. Also, hormone production. Many hormones are actually based on cholesterol. And if you don't have cholesterol, especially in your diet, you will be suffering because of the lack of production of these essential hormones. Then you have brain functions. Cholesterol is extremely important for brain functions and immune system support. So when your cholesterol is low, that can actually be a sign of a poor health in older individuals. It's very important to understand this, because obviously until recently it has been believed that cholesterol is very bad for you, and if it's high, it's a disaster. They will put you on statins, and actually those cholesterol suppressing or lowering medications in most cases will cause adverse effects. Everything that I've just mentioned will be simply postponed because of lowered cholesterol. So it's not cholesterol that is the problem. It is metabolic dysfunction which is driven by chronically elevated insulin. So where is the problem? The problem is in the traditional so-called healthy diets, which are predominantly made of carbohydrates, advised to go up to 70%. Protein would be advised to be around 20% and fat around 10%. But these diets basically drive insulin high constantly. And obviously they cause repeated insulin spikes throughout the day. So if you eat, as many people do, carbs for breakfast, usually some type of cereals, then you have snack, maybe some carbohydrates again, maybe a little sandwich or something. Then for lunch you also have carbs. You either eat a big sandwich, or you eat pizza, or you eat pasta, or chicken and rice, or similar. Then more snacks again, and then for dinner you must have carbs again. So the problem is now that because of eating those carbs all the time, you are constantly causing that insulin roller coaster because of your carbohydrates spiking up many times per day. Insulin has to be produced in order to lower glucose, blood sugar, and that will cause permanent increased levels of insulin. So if you do this every day, year after year, you are most likely to develop chronically elevated insulin, which will be causing eventually insulin resistance. And this is the first step into diabetes type 2. Now, the problem is when your insulin is high, all these benefits that I have mentioned of low carbohydrate diets will be eliminated. So you won't be having all these benefits. Now, these diets have been promoted as healthy diets, and they have been followed by so many globally, causing all these unwanted health consequences, especially diabetes type 2, cardiovascular diseases, and premature deaths. When your insulin ever drops, you simply stop burning body fat. Your repair slows down and inflammation increases. And this is not how human body evolved. Historically, humans had periods of eating, fasting, and low insulin. So that metabolic rhythm is critical for longevity. You know that in many videos, I have advocated eating 2 to 3 meals per day. The reasons were not only that you're going to burn more body fat eating 2 or 3 meals, which are going to be high in protein, medium fat, low carbohydrate diets, and also build more muscle because of that, because of increased insulin sensitivity. But in this case, the benefit of eating twice per day, for example, will be extremely positive when it comes to your metabolic health and longevity, simply because your body will have time to reset hormonally and keep your insulin sensitivity very high. And this is the first necessary factor for good metabolic health, hence longevity. So the goal with a healthy diet, which is best diet for longevity, is to keep your insulin sensitivity high. Because with your insulin sensitivity high, the nutrients go to the muscle. Your insulin receptors are open and they are welcoming amino acids and glucose into the muscle cell, keeping the muscle cells alive. We now know that the most important tissue for longevity is muscle tissue. So you need to pay attention to maintaining that muscle tissue healthy. And keeping insulin sensitivity high is the most important factor in keeping your muscle tissue healthy. Also, with higher insulin sensitivity, your fat storage is reduced because you produce less insulin, which becomes more efficient in delivering necessary amino acids and glucose to the muscle cells and to the other cells in the body. You start burning more body fat because you will never be in an environment of very high insulin and very high glucose levels, which actually leads to fat storage. And when your insulin sensitivity is high, your energy is stable. So basically, when you eat twice per day, big protein meal with fat, you will be happy between the meals to carry on for 5, 6, 7 hours. You won't be having any hunger, you won't be having any drop of energy. For example, I eat 2 or 3 times per day. I am full of energy. I train 5 times per week. I train 30 sets in average per muscle group. And all that comes from me, my body being full of energy. If I wasn't full of energy, I wouldn't be able to do fraction of what I do. So what is the real longevity diet? It's nothing extreme, it's nothing trendy, and that's not what most people are doing. It's a diet that keeps insulin low. This is the most important thing. Remember that. The diet that supports metabolic health and also provide essential nutrients for all your organs and tissues. And that, of course, means high quality protein, which can only come from animal food, healthy fats, which always come from natural animal food, and lower carbohydrate intake. So foods like meat, eggs, oily fish, they are not a problem. They are actually perfect. They are part of the solution. And longevity is not about avoiding food. It's about supporting how your body actually works. And if you control insulin, you are controlling aging. So let me remind you that after 40 years in bodybuilding, competing 46 times, winning 17 titles, coaching over 3,500 people, I have also published 12 ebooks for you, which are fully loaded with detailed information about everything you always wanted to know about bodybuilding, healthy living, and healthy eating. So if you want to enrich your knowledge and finally start eating healthy, building muscles, and burning body fat, simply click on that link in the comments and you can download my ebooks. Another thing that I want to mention is that I have recently published Bodybuilding Blueprint course, in which I personally demonstrate and explain the most effective exercises for all major muscle groups. The course is made of 8 videos. In 6 videos, I cover every single muscle group with most effective exercises. 1 video is dedicated to nutrition and 1 video is dedicated to training splits. So if you want to learn how to train properly in perfect form, if you want to stop wasting time in the gym, if you want to stop risking injuries, then my Bodybuilding Blueprint course will be your perfect choice. If interested, simply click on that link in the comments and you can access my Bodybuilding Blueprint course. So guys, if you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, share the video, send me your comments, and until the next video, I wish you all the best.